setting up our materials and equipment to actually cast our first baits. I have a mold here taken apart that's going to be 6 different bugs, and these bugs actually have legs on them. And so prior to casting any of the material in the molds, we need to give this a quick short shot of vegetable spray, just plain old cooking spray. And that acts as our mold release. So it doesn't take much, and then we like to get that in the mold and all over where the cavities are to make the baits come out easier. One thing to remember with the students is I would try and do this over a shop towel like this, or somewhere where you have rags down or newspaper. Don't let them spray the cooking spray on the mold over the floor and the cooking spray get on the floor, because it is cooking spray and it is very slick when it's done. So our next thing is to put the legs in the mold. So we all know that insects have 6 legs, so I have 3 strands of material that I'm going to put in the bottom of the mold that will represent the legs, and we'll cut these apart when the mold is done. So this is some of the kind of the tedious work that goes along with this. So we have the legs in position, and put the top of the mold on, and then we like to bolt the mold together, and you could use any fastening device you want, but I like 1/4 by 20 bolts with wing nuts. They're quick, they're cheap, and the kids can manipulate these pretty easy. I know some schools use different size bolts, or they use C-clamps or any device or rubber bands, but I like to use the bolts. Make sure we got a good seal, because you know the 3D printing comes out really nice, but there's still a little bit of work that you have to do to clean up the molds before you 3D print, or before you actually cast them. So we sand the faces of the molds a little bit before we cast, and then we make sure that there's no outlying 3D filament in the mold where we're going to be casting the baits. Now, on this mold, we have the 6 bugs inside, and this is the location of where we're going to be putting in the hot plastic. On the other end, we have the vent holes. So I have this device here that we use so that we can be pushing the hot plastic through and make sure that the air comes out, and when we see plastic coming out this end of the mold, we know that the cavity is full. Now, I'm going to check on the plastic that we have warming up in the microwave. If you are using plastic that's brand new, right out of the bottle, like this, it may take a couple times cooking this at like 1-minute intervals or 30-second intervals until you get it to be the consistency of 30-weight motor oil, and then it would be ready to cast. Now, I already have some plastic ingots that we've used in the past, and I'm heating up one of those in the microwave. So as we heat that up, we have to check it periodically and stir it. And right now you can see that the consistency of this is kind of like peanut butter, and it needs to be a little bit thinner. It needs to pour about the consistency of 30-weight motor oil. So I'm going to go another 30 seconds. And we'll see how that turns out. As soon as it's ready, we will be able to cast. The hot plastic I'm going to pour into this plunger, and the cylinder is got a rubber O-ring so none of the plastic comes back through. It's a little bit thicker aluminum, so my hand's not going to get quite as hot. If I was using this baster from a local hardware store, then that aluminum gets pretty hot pretty fast. So we'll check our material one more time. And we want it to be pourable. It's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. If you don't get it to the consistency of 30 weight motor oil, it's going to cool off a little bit too fast, and you might get what we call a short shot on your mold. So one more time at 30 seconds I think will be enough. Now when we actually do the casting, I'll turn this so that you'll be able to see the plastic coming out the end. We have some molds with the plastic hole in the middle. This will be another one that we'll try and do with the hole in the middle, so the plastic is going both directions. So this one we would just put flat on the countertop. But these other two are all going to be with a bigger hole on the bottom. So I'm hoping now that this first batch of plastic is ready to go, and it is. Yep. Now when you pour this, this is another reason you want gloves on. If you don't pour perfectly, and if I missed and didn't have the glove on, my left hand would be getting pretty hot. What you don't want is to touch the hot plastic. So we screw that on. I'm going to put the plunger here and just press slowly on the plunger until I see the plastic coming out the end, and you can already see that, and then I'm going to hold it for a little bit. If I don't hold this, a lot of times air will come back into the cavity, and the bug would have air bubbles or air pockets. So I'm not sure if you can see this on the video, but there is plastic coming out here. There's actually a little bit of plastic coming out the sides where the legs are, and as soon as that starts to solidify and cool enough, then I can take the plunger away. And you can see that it already started to solidify in there. Now, what we usually tell the kids is let that set for 2 to 5 minutes before you take it apart. So we're going to pour this back in the plunger. So here we go with a mold with the hole in the middle. So I can see a little bit of steam coming out the vent holes. I'm pressing down slowly. Now I can see a little bit of plastic coming out both ends. Well, one end so far. Now it's coming out both ends. So I'm just going to hold that briefly so the plastic doesn't backtrack. And since this mold is flat and the plastic's in the vent hole, that little bit of plastic is going to cool fairly quickly. Now we're going to go back to the first mold. This should be cool enough by now that I can take this apart, and we can see if our first mold produced any soft baits. So we take the wing nuts off, take the bolts out, and we open that up, and we have 6 soft plastic baits. Now we have a little bit of extra plastic around the legs, and we can trim the legs to the length we want, but all of the extra plastic can be just nipped off and be put back into the Pyrex dish. Now the last thing about the mold making, if we come back to our plunger or syringe, you can see that there's a bunch of plastic on the end right here, but that's not a problem. As I already said, you can reuse all this plastic. Pops right out of there. We grab that, This time we don't even have to do anything. I mean, this is perfectly clean. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you can find troubleshooting or how-to videos on our website. Thank you.